Climates naturally change. When media covers extreme weather, it draws public concern. Drought may not be as explosive as a tornado, but its effects are far-reaching. Meteorologist Mark Ewens works with information about weather patterns. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Katie. Appreciate it.
Now, your position in the National Weather Service, what is it all about and how does it give you the knowledge of these extreme weather patterns?
Well, a lot of it is experience, training in the military, college, and just on-the-job training. Been doing this as the data manager at the Weather Service, and I'm the climate forecaster as well. So a lot of education, a lot of experience.
Now, you provided us with a map of the United States, and we're actually going to put that up right now for our viewers to see. What exactly are we looking at here?
That is called the U.S. Drought Monitor. Is a depiction of drought conditions across the United States. The darker reds and the purples indicate where the drought is the most severe. And recently today with the new Drought Monitor indicated that drought conditions have become extreme in portions of the Red River Valley, which simply means it's very dry, obviously, but also river flows are being affected, and we're starting to see some of the impacts at the grocery store because of the way the drought affected the crops this past summer.
Okay, so we're in a drought right now, and so I assume that means, we're in a dry cycle. What exactly does that mean?
Well, drought is a multifaceted thing of nature, as it were. Drought occurs when you have a decrease in precipitation. The one graphic there shows there's an extreme variability in the normal precipitation patterns. You'll have prolonged dry periods, prolonged wet periods. So as this graphic indicates, we can see where the precipitation dropped down during the 30s and 40s, came back up 50s, 60s, dropped off a little bit in parts of the 70s, and now has been way high. Most of the last 20 years, now we've reversed once again. So it's the natural variability of climate.
Okay, now you mentioned earlier, this may affect people's, grocery bills. What exactly is this, drought going to have? What effect is it going to have on the citizens?
Well, I think we're already seeing it in the grocery bills because crops were affected in such a wide area this past summer, and any products, especially corn products, things of that nature that were impacted, small grains. It was a very wide spectrum drought from that standpoint, had a broad impact across ag.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about agriculture. Farmers were able to start planting early because of these dry conditions. What does it mean for the farmer? What's the market impact?
Well, when you have an early planting season, if you get enough precipitation throughout the planting season, then obviously you can have good crops. But what happened, unfortunately, this year was we started off in the early planting season, but it wasn't supported by sufficient rains during the course of the year. So it was very tough for the crops to continue to grow and to mature properly. Now, on the one hand, there was a lot of damage to crops, especially in the Midwest. We're seeing very good crop reports here in our part of the country. We had a lot of stored soil moisture from the wet cycle that was used up during the dry period. So the crops had enough moisture to really grow. We're hearing reports of record sugar beets, a lot of sugar, a lot of tonnage in the beets. The downside is, since we're not seeing the precipitation now in the fall to recharge the soil moisture, we could have issues next spring.
Okay. Now, we showed a little bit earlier the hydrological cycle there, and that kind of depicts probably what's going through a farmer's mind. Could you explain that a little bit to us?
Sure. That graphic, the hydrological cycle, represents how we as a society typically have a lag in how we respond. It's wet, it's wet, it's wet. It takes time for us to start to build mitigation to protect against the flooding because we think perhaps it's temporary. Then we are ramping up to prepare against flooding. Then it changes and it gets dry, and it takes a while for us to kick in and think we also have to prepare and protect for the opposite side of climate. We use the term normal in meteorology as if it means something. Well, normal is simply the average of those extremes, and we're seeing the opposite extreme from the past 20 years.
Okay, now, we see in the media, we have bad weather all the time. But, is the weather really as bad as the media is portraying, or are we just maybe more informed than we used to be?
It's a combination of things. Climate change has impacted the frequency and severity of weather events, but also our population has increased. As population increases, we're spreading out across a lot of areas of the United States. So if a storm hits that may have once been a rural area unpopulated, now there's damage. And yes, the reporting. social media has dramatically increased the number of reports we receive at the Weather Service. So it's a combination of many factors.
Now, really quick, why do you do what you do? Why do you have such an interest in this?
I grew up in New Orleans, grew up in hurricane area. I just loved it. There was just something about the weather that grabbed me when I was a young boy, and I've followed it for almost 40 years now.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.